When the time is right, you'll know. I'm Rob Murgatroyd, and I can hear the voice inside your head from here. You're ready for your next chapter, but you're unclear on what that looks like and how to make it happen. On the Next Chapter podcast, you'll be inspired to let go of your current identity and shift into a brand new chapter of your life that makes you feel alive. The struggles you're facing now will be substantiated by success stories that'll feel like your own. You'll walk away with tangible strategies backed by experiential evidence that will bring your next chapter to life. Your next chapter is achievable, and it's closer than you think. What's up, everybody? Today, I want to talk about happiness. All right, so spoiler alert. The research is in that after about $75,000 a year, people don't report that they are that much happier. So I wanted to get that out of the way right from the beginning, because the first place that everybody goes is, if I had more money, I would be happier. In fact, whatever money you're making, chances are that if you're setting a goal for your next income goal, chances are it's going to be 3 times what you're currently making. If you're making $100,000, your goal is going to be $300,000. $300,000, your goal is going to be $900,000, or at least that's what the research proves out. But the reality is that that number doesn't make you that much happier. So what does? Well, there's a Yale psychology professor named Laurie Santos, and we'll link her up in the show notes, who's conducted a bunch of research on happiness. And it's really interesting stuff to consider as you're navigating your next chapter, because chances are that you didn't give a whole lot of consideration in your either current or previous chapter to how much happiness you were going to have in your life with what you were doing, let's say, for a living. I know I didn't. My brother said you'd be a good chiropractor, and I kind of went out and became a chiropractor. I mean, it wasn't exactly like that, but it was kind of like that. So Lori found out that when she talked to the students who were attending Yale, that over 50% of them at Yale University, over 50% of them self-reported that they were either anxious or depressed. That is a lot of anxious or depressed, very privileged people. So what's going on? Like, how could half of Yale students consider themselves to be unhappy? And actually, there was a significant percentage of that 50%. It was like something like 30 or 40% of them, not 30, it was like maybe 20 or 30% of them actually had suicidal thoughts. So what's happening here? So there's a few myths that she talked about. And most people believe that to get happier, they need to change their circumstances. Like, they need to get rich. They need to get a new relationship. They need to get a job promotion. But she found that most of those circumstantial changes were not going to affect happiness all that much. For example, after you're earning a middle-class income, earning much more money does not make you happier. Now, I know that internally, there's probably 2 sides to you right now. There's a part of you that's like, he's probably right. And there's another part of you that's going, yeah, I know, but I still know that if I have more money and more things and a bigger house and a bigger car, I'm going to have a lot more fulfillment and a lot more joy. But there's a lot of research to show that if you're earning around $75,000, doubling or even quintupling your income doesn't actually affect happiness at all. It won't decrease your stress. It won't increase your positive emotion. It just doesn't have the effect that we think. And I know that even though you intellectually know this, you're probably still going to say, yeah, but I still need to make more money. I get it. I'm in that camp and I understand it. But I think just having the awareness as you're considering choosing your next chapter, navigating your next chapter, thinking about your next chapter, just know that after around 75,000 is kind of an interesting number because, depending on where you are in the country, it's a number that gives you enough money where, you're certainly not on the poverty line. You're not rich, but you're not on the poverty line. But the things that actually make you happy don't have much to do with that $75,000. So what does? Social connection is the number one thing that makes people report that they ultimately wind up being happier. And I could tell you that living in Italy, I've always heard, like, if you read, the Blue Zone books, they always talk about community and, the people in Ikaria, which is, I think, the number 2 Blue Zone in the world. And we'll link up Blue Zones by Dan Buettner in the show notes. And Blue Zones basically are the area where people live the longest. I think Ikaria is number 2, and number 1 is like Okinawa, Japan, and number 3, believe it or not, is Loma Linda, California, which is this weird little, not weird, but small little enclave in Southern California that has, it's something like 99% Seventh-day Adventists. And what all 3 of those I just mentioned to you have in common is community. They are extremely close to their friends, their parents, their grandparents. And in places like Italy, like the siren that you can hear going by is the Italian ambulance going by. That's where I am right now. This place that I'm in is a very, very tight-knit community. And it's really hard for me to explain to my friends in Australia, Canada, how community has affected me and our family living here, because you read about it, you hear about it, but until you live it, you don't really understand what it feels like to have these big long dinners with all of your friends and their parents. And there's a feeling that money has nothing to do with, but it fills your soul. So what's interesting is people talk a lot about gratitude. And in this research, I'm so hesitant to say this because I feel like I'm going to get a million comments on this, but the research bears out that being grateful didn't have nearly the impact that hanging out with family and friends did. So let's talk about America. America ranks really low in the World Happiness Report. So please don't shoot the messenger here. I'm not anti-American because all of a sudden, I'm living in the land of La Dolce Vita. I get it. We're living in Italy. We're happy. We're not anti-American, right? It's just that the truth is that when you look at the people who do the research, like, Google World Happiness Report, you'll see that America ranks almost at the bottom. So what are Americans doing wrong? Like, we have more money than almost every country in the survey, but we have one of the highest reported unhappiness. The main reason is that America, this is what the research shows, the main reason is that America doesn't prioritize things like time off or time with their family or play. In fact, Americans use how hard they're working as a badge of honor. When I talk to my friends, it's interesting living here because if I talk to somebody and I'm like, somebody will reach out and they'll say, "Hey, you want to grab coffee?" And I'm like, okay. And I'll open up my calendar, I'll look, and I'm like, when? They're like, "Oh no, now. You want to go now and get coffee?" I'm like, "Now?" And they're like, "Yeah." I'm like, okay, let's go. There's this in the moment thing that I don't know why, just being here allows things to happen. I've talked about this before, but it's kind of like nature, nurture, and neighborhood. So let me explain that. So nature is, it's just kind of your nature. You're either like a morning person and an evening person, or your nature is to be very curious. You get it. What's your nature like? And then there's nurture, which is how your parents raised you, right? There's not a whole lot you can do about that. But then there's neighborhood. It's how neighborhood affects you. And when you're in an environment of community, that neighborhood really, really affects you. So when I talk to my friends in the States or in Canada or Australia, they're all like, "Dude, I am so busy. You have no idea. I've never been busier." And it's like they don't say it in a way that is negative, like it's a bad thing that they're busy. They say it almost as if there's a badge of honor for how busy they are. And when you look at the research, you see that Americans take an average of 1 week a year off. And that's crazy. Like, how do you just take a year off? When you look at Scandinavian countries or European countries, who are the people that report the highest, they take 8 weeks a year off. So now you have a country that has tons of money, like America, takes 1 week off. Then you have other countries that have a fraction of the money that Americans have and take way more time off and obviously make less money, reporting happier. So, okay, let's talk more. While we're on the American thing, let's talk about more about America. America, and by America, I mean like North America, right? We are a very consumerism society. We love to buy things. I do too. We love the bling. We love to buy stuff. The research shows that buying stuff just does not make us much happier. So when I'm talking to people now and I'm coaching clients who are working towards their next chapter, they say, look, man, I've got the money. I could buy what I want. I can do what I'm doing in my sleep. It's easy for me to make money. Well, why aren't you happier? So when you're thinking about this next chapter of your life, I want you to really think about the things that make people happy. I think it's worth it for you to do some work. I'll give you 3 people to look into. One, he's called Chip Conley. He was maybe he was like a CFO, or he wasn't the CEO, but he was in the C-suite somewhere with Airbnb. And he's done a lot of research on happiness. And he's got an academy called the Modern Elder Academy. I think it's what it's called. And we'll find it and link it up. Look into him. Another one to look into is a book called Strength to Strength. I'm looking at the book now. It's called From Strength to Strength. And it's by Arthur Brooks, who's another Ivy League professor. He's a professor at Harvard, and he does a happiness class as well. And he's done a ton of research. Great book for you to read. The third is to listen to this podcast, because I'm going to be doing a lot of conversations on it. But I want you to really look into these things as you're considering what your next chapter is, and really think about what are the things that are going to make me happy, and eliminate money. You're not going to be able to help yourself. You're going to come back to money. But for the sake of considering your next chapter, pull money out of it and say, what would I love to do? Because I promise you, once you pull money out of it and you identify the thing that you would really, really love to do, there's always a way to find out to monetize it. But don't do the reverse. Don't come up with a way to make money and then figure out how to like it. It's just not going to work. For example, my wife and I started doing these events around the world. And what we found was that these travel experiences that we did together made us really, really happy. So we thought, what if we did this with other people and we did it together? And so we created these events around the world. They were called Work Hard, Play Hard, and that moved into our highest level offering, which is the Platinum event. And it's now spinning off into a new event that we're doing that is not business related, right? And so you can see the theme that we're going down. And it is our next event in Tuscany, which we're going to be doing in the fall. We're going to have a small group of people, maybe 30 people max, that we're going to take to our favorite places for the sole purpose of experiencing things that will make you happy, like wine and food and learning about art and culture and those kinds of things. So if you want to learn more about that, we'll put a link in the show notes for you to get your name added to the email list. So that's it for today. When you're thinking about happiness, check out some of those links that I mentioned and really, really think about what is it that's going to truly make you happier. That's it, everybody. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye. The next step in your next chapter, rate and review this podcast. This is one small way to cause a ripple effect and help other people just like you move into their next chapter.